Awesome. Well, welcome to the first episode of the Fully Alive podcast, episode number 1. And today we're going to talk about a conversation that's just real. It's real. It's not high energy. It's challenging. And it's this idea of navigating spiritual valleys. My name is Brian Phipps, and I'm on the team that hosts the Fully Alive digital community that inspired this podcast. You can join the community for free by downloading the app, Fully Alive by Disciples Made, in the Apple Store or on Google Play. And this podcast is about people like you, people that are trading their lives for the fully alive life that Jesus offers. And I cannot wait for you to meet our guests on this first podcast, Josh and Amy Thompson. They're definitely an inspiration to me, and I know they will be to you. All right, let's get with it. Josh and Amy, just start by telling us a little bit about you and your family.
Yeah, well, we are a family of 5. Amy and I have been married almost 20 years now. It'll be 20 years in August. And then we have 3 kids. Our oldest is a girl, she's 16. And then we have 2 boys that are 14 and 12. For the last year, we're living in Wichita, Kansas, and we're a military family, so we're now on our way to West Point, New York. So we're currently in transition.
You guys are crazy. You're absolute trailblazers, being willing to be the first people on this podcast as you're in transit. Like, you're not there yet. You're halfway, and you just did an 8-hour trek from, I think, Nebraska to Chicago, staying with family on your way. So I can't thank you enough for being willing to do this. That's huge. So you started to talk about your employment, your military family. What does that mean? What are the roles that the two of you have played over the years?
Yeah. Yes.
Sure. So Josh has been in the military for 20 years and just retired last year. And then I've been in for about 18 years. And we met when we were basically in our first year, kind of out in the military together as second lieutenants. And I was in medical school training to be a doctor, and Josh was in flight school training to be a pilot. And so Josh spent the first 10 years of his time in the Army as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot flying medevac missions, deployed a couple times right off the bat because we were a nation at war. And I started out basically as a pediatrician in the Army and kind of have transitioned to taking care of soldiers all over the world, and just finished a sports medicine training here in Wichita, Kansas. But yeah, we both basically, our goal was basically when we met to serve our country for 20 years and make it our mission to basically serve Christ through this mission field called the Army. So it's been pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's a fantastic story, but I think you got distracted by some traffic.
Yeah, our dog started playing down
The dogs just started
like those are some really energetic kids, or the dog. Somebody let the dogs out.
Right when we started talking, our dog ran down the stairs with a toy, and then the other dog started chasing him. So.
That's hilarious.
Shoot, sorry.
That's quite all right. We can accommodate.
How's it going?
Such is life.
What a mess. All right.
Well, that should actually just take the rest of the stress that remains just completely out.
This is.
All right.
Yeah, I have a feeling this will happen again. But.
Maybe so. I'll just start right there. So, Josh and Amy, you've introduced the idea that you're a military family. Amy, tell us a little bit more about that. What are the roles that y'all have played over the years?
So Josh and I met when we were second lieutenants, first starting out in the Army. I was in medical school, becoming a doctor, and then Josh was in flight school, getting ready to become a pilot. So Josh spent the first 10 years of his time in the Army as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot flying medevac, deployed to Iraq, deployed to Afghanistan, kind of right from the get-go, doing those missions. And then I've basically been a physician in the Army, started out in pediatrics, trained in adolescent and young adult medicine so I could better take care of soldiers. kind of served all over the country in different roles and assignments as a physician, been deployed a couple times as well, taking care of soldiers overseas in combat, and then just finished a sports medicine fellowship training, basically to better serve soldiers and better serve athletes as we get ready to go to West Point here. So Josh just retired after 20 years in service, finished his time as a hospital commander. And then I'm got a couple more years to go. I'm at 18 years of service as an Army doctor, and we'll probably finish my time at West Point. So it's been really the way we've looked at our service together in the military is like we're on mission for Christ. We're in this mission field called the Army, and we move every 2 to 4 years. And it's just been an amazing adventure as a family. So
That's so cool. And I was actually at the transfer of command in Fort Campbell with y'all. Well, a little sneak peek into the story here. Josh and I have been in a triad together for nearly 2 years. Started with Leaders Made and has continued since. And then in episode 2, you'll get to meet one of my other triad buddies, Kirby Langley. So that's going to be kind of fun. But no, because I know the story, I also know that you recently outranked, like he's the 20-year guy, you're the 18-year gal, but you just outranked him. Is that right?
Yeah, I just got promoted to colonel, and my dad. It was cool because my dad's a Vietnam veteran. He promoted me to lieutenant colonel, and then he promoted me to full colonel just last month. So I guess I officially outranked Josh now, but that's okay.
He's told me you've outranked him the whole time, so that's all good. But sorry about that, Josh. But
yeah,
I got to salute, request permission to enter the house now.
It's all good.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for everything that you've done. I know a good bit of the story that you're not telling. And so when we use those words, thank you for your service, that comes from a very rich and grateful place. And so thank you for that. Tell us how in the world did we get introduced? How did this work out? Josh, that was more connection with you. So how did we get started in this relationship?
It was really interesting. We had arrived at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and we're really just kind of looking for a sense of community. We went to the post chapel there, and the post chaplain had, or the chaplain that was at the chapel, he said, "Hey, we don't really have small groups or life groups or anything like that going on right now, but there's one other family that has come to me and expressed some interest in connecting and forming a group. So let me introduce you to those guys." So that was Josh and Megan Bell. And he introduced us, and so we started meeting, and we found a few other folks that were at the post chapel that were interested in doing a life group. So we started hosting at our house, and together the Bells and us were, kind of just, we were hosting it, we were doing it, and it was very kind of unorganized, and there wasn't any structure or anything. It was just a group of like-minded people that were meeting and doing a little bit of like a discovery Bible study, so to speak. And then I don't recall, maybe a few months in, Megan was like, "Hey, when we were in Kansas, there was this thing called Disciples Made, and they had a great program, and so maybe we could reach out to them." So Josh and I reached out, and sent you an email, I think, and then you and Brian Johnson from the KC Underground were like, "What is going on here? We want to talk some more." You guys actually ended up coming out to Fort Campbell and meeting with us. You spent a weekend with us and just kind of blew our minds with all the DM stuff and whiteboard sessions. And we were like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." But it was really cool because the small group that we had assembled very unintentionally, everybody was kind of spiritually mature, really hungry, ready for some multiplication and some discipleship type of curriculum. And it was just that God ordained, right place, right group of people, right time. And then just to have, the two Brians interjected into the middle of that. And it was just pouring gasoline on a fire. And so we actually started with Missionaries Made, and went through that curriculum, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And then we immediately turned around and went through Leaders Made, and it just kind of kept going from there. And then the really cool part about that is that because they're all military families, each of the six families from the original one we've all since left Fort Campbell, Africa, Alaska, back to Kansas, going to all these different places, and then they're all using it and kind of multiplying and doing it. And so it's just been really neat to see. So that was kind of our initial connection and introduction. And since then, we've just had a tremendous amount of opportunity to keep working with yourself and with all the different folks from Disciples Made, Fully Alive.
Gosh, there's a couple of things about that story that I just want to highlight how kind God has been to all of us. One, just bringing people that are not connected around a mission. There's a common purpose that all of you had at Campbell, and it brought you together in spite of the fact that there wasn't an organized way to do that. So normal, ordinary people, none of you are on staff. In fact, the chaplain even said, we don't have a coordinated effort for this. But people with initiative found out a way to have that happen and be resourceful and go to things that they'd experienced, and then all of a sudden get connected and then mobilized to the point where you've actually multiplied. You're training chaplains around the world with this stuff and making a difference in people's lives. That was fascinating. Mm-hmm. Then the second one is we live in a day and age now where technology allows us to stay connected even though we're geographically separated. And it's almost like you haven't lost anything as far as your efforts at discipling others and multiplication. I think you actually have a group inside of the Fully Alive app for people that may be wondering, Disciples Made, Fully Alive, what's all that about? Disciples Made is the ministry that I've been leading for well over 13 years now, and it hosts the Fully Alive community. So we have just been the people to set that thing up so that many people can come in and take advantage of the tools and the processes there to do this multiplication. But even Josh, when we were in Leaders Made together, you got deployed. And as far as your connection with our group, which meets virtually because we have people from all over the country in our Leaders Made cohort, you didn't miss a beat. It just was 4:35 in the afternoon where you were in the world instead of 5:30 in the morning where we were.
Yeah, such a blessing just to have that group behind me and supporting me and praying for me during that really challenging time in my life. And it really was, it was such a cool thing because it was really stressful, really kind of high pressure situation. And for me, the real value was that I had this group of guys that I could turn to and I could go to and I could vent, right? As a leader and as a commander, I can't go and complain to soldiers, right? To my men,
right.
Women. And when things were frustrating me or when I was struggling and I needed some fresh ideas, I could turn around and either share it in my journals or share it during our huddles and just kind of have a sounding board, a safe place to go, which in the leadership roles, that doesn't always exist, right? I mean, I could go to some of my peers and a lot of them are like, what's wrong with you? You're weak or you're whatever, but having that kind of safe place to go, I think was really valuable for me. And before we move on, I think it is worth mentioning that in that initial group of 6 families, you touched on it very briefly, but there were 2 chaplains. 2 Army chaplains and their families were in that initial group. And I never in a million years thought that, me as just a normal parishioner, lay person within the church would have 2, ministers, 2 pastors in my small group coming to get fed, right? Like coming in and looking and seeking that community and that connection. And it's just the Army's such a weird place, especially for spiritual type of relationships. That was a really interesting experience. It was awesome. But it was different,
I bet it was cool to realize, man, these ministers, these chaplains, they're normal people too with real problems and real issues. And man, how powerful is that? It's like one of the things we want to do is help just minimize whatever the divide is between clergy and not clergy, or, ordained people and lay people, whatever the different terminologies are, we're all a kingdom of priests. Jesus makes that clear, and the writer of Hebrews makes it clear. We're all priests. We're all to participate in this to one another. So you've already just started to describe some ways that the Fully Alive experience has shaped you there, just in the personal engagement with one of our advanced cohorts leaders made, missionaries made, et cetera. But what in other ways? And Amy, let's turn to you. What would you say the Fully Alive focus, which is really developing character and calling so that we can grow into the intimacy and influence that we were created for? I mean, that's Fully Alive in a nutshell. We can measure what Fully Alive looks like. We can provide tools to help you make advancements in Fully Alive. But what are some of the ways that have personally changed you the most in this Fully Alive effort?
I think the number one thing is the habit of every single day getting up and reading my Bible and journaling. And that just becomes really personal and really powerful when I'm almost, I'm in the Word every single day. I know what I believe about it. And from there, I can write my I believe and my I will statement, which almost empowers me for the day, to live in Christ every single day. So the tools that you guys give through the platform, it just creates that habit to where your hunger for the word, it just grows and grows and grows to where I think we've been doing Bible study through Disciples Made this entire year. And it's most of the time it's like a 5-day-a-week reading plan. I'm like, Josh, we need to make it 7. We need to make it 7. Cause it's like, what am I supposed to do on Saturday and Sunday? I'm like, there's no more, so, but it does create a hunger for the word, and that just changes everything, that changes my whole world every single day, and my perspective, and my easy to keep my eyes fixed on Christ every single day, and no matter what I'm going through, it's like, God is with me. I know it, I believe it. His promises are true every single day, and the coolest thing is, like, even when we were driving here, I was driving behind Josh. Josh is driving the motorhome. I'm behind.
Harvey.
And we're driving into the state of Illinois yesterday, passing Wheaton College, which is for Christ and his kingdom. We're going to do a college visit there tomorrow for our daughter. And there was this bright, beautiful rainbow that just arced across the whole sky. I mean, like the brightest rainbow I've ever seen in my life. And full, like I could see it from one end to another. And I was like, that's God right there. Like he's everywhere, and he's good, and his promises are true. And I don't know. It's just like I can see the goodness of God everywhere, just by being in his word every day and knowing who he is and how good he is. So I think your tools just are so life-changing, obviously, in the spiritual dimension, growing our faith, getting closer to God. So
I love that. And one of the things I love the most about it, Amy, is there's nothing new there at all. It's not like we came up with this crafty idea for our day and age. No, we just want to help people become close to Jesus through his spirit. Like he says, abide in me and you'll bear good fruit. And all we want to do is just help people get connected with him. We don't care about your connection with Fully Alive. We're just a resource. We're in a community to help you actually accomplish these things. And it really is powerful. And I love how you've shared that. It's like tuning into the radio called My Connection with Jesus through his spirit, through this very simple habit. And by the way, as you're listening, folks here, you can sign up and engage this habit right away. And the journaling isn't this long Dear Diary journal. It's just, as Amy said, there's 2 components that we invite you. What is Jesus teaching me today? That's the I believe statement. And then what am I going to do about it? It's the action statement for the day. And it doesn't have to be, I'll go to the mission field, or I'll join the army, or I'll quit my job and blah, blah, blah. It could be just simply, I'm going to look for signs that God is present with me today based upon what I've seen. And then a rainbow would be like, oh, there it is. And that just creates an act of worship, which facilitates the abiding. You can actually, as we said earlier, download the app for free. Fully Alive by Disciples Made. Just download the app and start engaging one of the Explore courses or Develop courses. Everything there is for free, and everything encourages that abiding practice of
Mhm.
the Bible reading and journaling. It's all there. And I hope that you will do it. Josh, is there something you wanted to add about just the biggest change for you personally?
Yeah, I think I would be right there with Amy. Before we had access to these resources and tools, I was not in the the word daily, and that habit to outcome, right? That H2O of like
Mm-hmm.
just getting in the word, I
Mhm.
think has definitely been the most important. And it's been so important for us that like we even have our kids doing it, right? So all three of our kids
Mhm.
have the Fully Alive app on their phones,
Wow.
and they're journaling.
Mhm.
And the cool thing is like we like it is that it
Mhm.
gives us a glimpse into their minds when they journal, and and they're sharing their journals. We can see it, and then we're remarking on it. But I also think it's valuable for them because not only do we get to see what they're journaling, but then they're seeing how we're journaling,
It's so
right? And
powerful.
and and there have been several times where um, you know like our middle son Robert, like he read a journal the other day, and he was like, "Oh, Dad, did you see Miss Christie's journal?" And
Mhm.
and he was sharing how like he got he took something
Gosh.
away from reading
Somebody else.
her observations that
Mhm.
kind of revealed something new in the scriptures of that particular day to him that he had missed when he read it.
Yeah.
And so I
That's
thought
so
that was
good.
like man, like
I know.
how powerful is that? Because like I could sit and read scripture on my own, and that's good, but like being able to kind of learn from others and doing it together,
Mhm.
it's created this tool, and it's in a place where they're already at, right? The kids are already on the tech,
Mhm.
Yeah.
um, and so it's in the place where they are. So it wasn't super hard to interject
Yeah.
it. Where it's like if I throw my my big giant Bible at them and say
Mhm.
sit down and read, they're like, oh, Dad, like
It's overwhelming. I think the community, I mean, it builds the community and the
Yes.
accountability and the encouragement. And that is so attractive, and as we go through the word together. So,
yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's the part that we didn't really talk about yet, but I'm glad you've brought that up. It's the Bible engagement, which has multiple
mhm.
components. You're reading the actual Bible itself, but you're not just reading it to check a box. You're actually engaging it by asking those two questions: What is Jesus teaching me today, and what am I going to do about it? And answering it in your "I believe" and "I will." But you're doing it with at least two other people. That's the
Mhm.
kicker here.
Yeah.
One, it's a motivation to do it because you learn. I mean, you learn from one another. You're encouraged to hear what other people have said. It's kind of fun to look and see the little notification and see that your triad member has mentioned you in a comment or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to stop again, don't we?
We'll pause it. Yeah. Here.
somebody knocked on the door, or somebody walked past the front of the house. The dogs are
Oh,
on high.
okay. All right. Well, I think
Okay.
I can just go back to making my
Yeah.
comment on this, and then I'll go to the
Yeah.
next question. Very,
Yeah,
very cool. All right. Now that highlights one of the things I love so much about this. We didn't mention it before, but it's it's not just reading the scripture, it's not just engaging the scripture, it's doing that in the context with at least two other people that are paying attention. And we don't do
Mhm.
this in great big groups. We actually help you develop the habit of doing that with a few others. And that's the encouraging
Mhm.
part of this. You get their immediate feedback. You got people that are close to you and supporting you and what you're learning and what you're going to do about it. And gosh, that's such a big deal. All right, let's change the topic here and start to talk about the other part of living fully alive. It isn't just the change that we have inside. Kind of a catalytic element of living the fully alive life is helping others live
Mhm.
fully alive. So how are you using this app or what you've learned through all this process to actually help others live fully alive?
yeah. I think that's. Well, you want to say something first?
Yeah. I just think like, I think we've seen it the biggest here in Kansas because we came out here for a year for this training program, and we started the Disciples Made Bible study with a new group of folks out here, and we've just, I mean, just the four families that have been in our Disciples Made Bible study group all year long, we've gotten to witness their growth all
Hmm.
year just by engaging in the Word of God, which they weren't really doing before. and it's been transformative. And then we've gotten so much feedback from these other families that their world has been changed. They've seen changes in their kids, you know, in their faith, just by walking with us together through the Word of God and through learning the bless rhythm and through these different Bible studies that we've just continued basically since September all the way till now. We're still in one right now. And I just think when you can teach other people to be in the Word of God and develop that appetite for it and learn how to truly be on mission for Jesus right where you're planted,
Yes.
like that shifts people's worlds. And that's just a life-changing way to understand. Number one, like relationship with Christ is you have to be in his Word to know him. And then to begin to see him work, and then to begin to realize, like, I don't have to go overseas to be a missionary.
Right.
I can be a missionary right in my own neighborhood through the blessed rhythm, you know, which we're all teaching each other and teaching it to our children. And it just becomes so powerful, you know, and eye-opening and life-changing. And we've seen that not only in ourselves, but in everyone we continue to invite in to join us in this journey, you know. And so it's just so transformative.
Yeah, I think that you know, so many people have that idea in their head coming into the experience that, like, to be a missionary, to be on mission, you got to either be like, you know, Ray Comfort out there on the corner, you know, telling people, like, you know, you're, you know, that kind of extreme, like, you know, if have you ever told a lie? Have you ever done this? You know, you're going to go to hell unless you repent right now and say, you know, it's like, people are so, you know, like, I don't want that. Right. And I definitely don't want to leave the comfort of, you know, my home and my community and, like, go overseas. And to have that realization, that's like, oh man, like, you know, I can be on mission at my kids' sports team. In my job, I can actually talk about this at work with coworkers.
In my favorite space.
Yeah, in my, you know, like my hangout place, my you know, my local pub, or just in my, you know, my cul-de-sac. And, like, every single time we invite families in and we kind of go through this with them, and, you know, everybody's kind of minds are just, like, exploding, like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean we can do this, like, right here?
That's so great.
Yeah, I also think, like, a lot of our friends, like, they whatever church they belong to, like, they go to church, or they've fallen away from going to church because that's almost not enough. And then they join the small group, and they're in the Word, and they're encouraged, and we're doing life together, and they're learning how to be on mission for Christ. And it's like, you can't teach that in the church either, you know, just by going through the motions in the Catholic Church. Like, you can't learn that, you know. So this is so, I think it's so important to be in a small group like this, apart from the church that you attend, to go even deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's our hope that more and more churches help people become, and there are great churches that do this, and hats off to them. Continue the good work, please. But the church, it's tempting. We actually kind of get trained in seminary to become the curator of God's stuff to people, so that we kind of want people to come to church so they can get what they need to grow spiritually. And if we can make that shift to, no, we're the church and we help you become dependent upon Jesus, we help you abide directly with Jesus through his Spirit, through these habits, then that's a game changer for the churches and all the people. And that's such a big deal. I think we ought to probably mention this real quick. There's probably a lot of folks on the call, listening to this podcast now, whether in your car or working out or whatever, who are going, I want more of that. They make it sound like that's fun, but I'm so busy, I can't imagine adding mission to any of those places, as meaningful as that might sound. And you guys don't have a thing going on, right? You don't have 3 kids.
Not at all.
You're not starting a business. You're not, being a physician in the Army and going through a fellowship and taking tests. Like, you have zero time for this, and yet you describe it as something that hasn't taken away or taken more time. You describe it as a value add to your life. Am I reading that right? Or am I hearing that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that, for us, like, I mean, even now, right, we're in transition. We're literally living in our RV now as we move our family from Kansas to New York. And, our group will still meet on Sunday. And, that is it becomes a period of like refreshment where we, where we want to, we get energized there. We reset.
Also,
So.
we're also doing our weekly meetings on Zoom. So,
All right, we need to hit pause here. I just got a text from, apparently there's some dogs barking or something, Hannah.
Oh yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll start that
Hannah,
question.
Yeah, Hannah, where do we pick that up? I'm assuming it's going back to let's mention the fact that it's the value add over the cost. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Talk about.
You good? Okay. All right, I'm eager to get to the spiritual valley part of this conversation, but it seems we need to pause and make an observation about what's happening here. I imagine that there's a lot of folks on the call who are hearing what you're saying and saying, I want that to be a part of my life. I want to have that benefit, in my pub or my community, my neighborhood, all these other things. But trying to be a missionary there, that just sounds like way too much to add to my schedule. Like you're making this talk about, or making this sound like it's more of a value add to your life than a cost. And you're not busy people or anything, right? You don't have 3 kids. Josh, you're starting a brand new business after your retirement. Amy, you're not only being a commander in the Army and a physician, but you just finished your own fellowship. Like you don't have margin, and yet you still feel like this is a value add and not a cost and tax to your time. Comments on that?
Yeah, no, it definitely, I think that's the biggest hesitation. Like when we invite others in, is that like they're always afraid of like the amount of time and committing to, an hour and then reading each day. But, for us, it really is like it's the one time each week that we look forward to. And it's our opportunity to recharge and refresh. And just kind of reset and get re-energized, right? It's your re-baselining for the week, and it's very refreshing for us. And so we actually look forward to it. We don't see it as like oh man, it's just another thing that we have to do.
I think we also do it on, like, we've been doing that this whole year on Zoom. So it's not like we got to like drive somewhere and get reorganized and, everybody, it's like when you're in the middle of a busy life, you can just, okay, let's shift gears, turn on Zoom, and we all connect over a Zoom meeting. So I think that from a lifestyle standpoint makes it easier for people to connect. And then, honestly, when we were at our busiest time about 3 years ago, without a small group, without a Bible study, we realized we were starving for it. And we were like, this, you're so busy, life starts to get overwhelming, and we're not centered around the Word of God every day. And we knew like we've got to change something because we need to recenter our lives around Christ and His Word. And as soon as we did that, it's like, everything kind of falls into place and gets even better. So
important for people to hear. So thank you for sharing that. You started to allude to kind of a darker time or a less fulfilled time. And of course, in our name, we talk about Fully Alive, and there's so many things about Fully Alive that are thrilling, exciting, peaceful. There's a lot of advantages to it that people would consider advantages, but we want to get real with this thing. Fully Alive doesn't mean I'm on the beach drinking Mai Tais and there's no problems, right? I mean, Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble, but I've overcome the world. And so we do have trouble. We do have spiritual valleys. And sometimes those valleys are, brought on by things that we've done or things that other people have done or not done. And Jesus tells us he'll actually want to use those valleys to take us to another spiritual level. So we want to get real. We want to do it in the first episode to just say, you know, Fully Alive is real, but the pain and these spiritual valleys are a real part of it as well. You've come prepared to share a spiritual valley that's affected your family. Can you describe that valley for us? Yeah, whoever is ready to go.
I think we each have one. I'll share one, and then Amy will
Wonderful.
share one. So the first one that really came to mind for us when we were talking about this in preparation for this podcast was, you know, we were both born and raised in the Catholic Church and had attended Catholic Church and done that. And in 2010, we had moved to San Antonio, Texas, and, you know, we're dutifully going to church on Sundays and attending. And it was, we had our 3 kids. They were all very small. Our youngest was, you know, newborn. And we just had this like experience where it was like, you know, the baby's crying in church and like people are shushing us. And, you know, it was not a welcoming or warm environment. And so, you know, we basically stopped going to church, you know, like it felt like we weren't welcome at church. And so we stepped away.
And we were overwhelmed by life.
Probably. Yeah. You got 3 kids.
In the Army, we're like,
yep.
It's like everything's so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like we actually stepped away and we just stopped going to church for a period, I don't know, 6 to 8 or 9 months or so. And then, you know, it was a really low point in our lives. You know, we both were hungry for it, but there was no relationship there. It was just very dry. It was dark. And then one of Amy's coworkers just invited us to another church. And, you know, as it was a non-denominational church, but as, you know, Catholics, like, you know, you're used to the traditional, like that's all we've known. You show up to this church, you know, and it's like there's a band and drums and
rock and roll church.
Got their hands up in the air, you know, and it was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening?
Everyone loves it. Everyone's like on fire.
But you know, long story short, like the preacher preached a message that like kind of hit us both right in the hearts and drew us in, and we were like, whoa, like. What, you know, first of all, like, what is this, right? Like, we had never experienced this. We've never had that, like, relationship, right? It was very, it was very, like, formal, right? Like, when you're in the old traditional Catholic way, it was like, there was this barrier, right? You have this, you know, you have a priest, right? This person who has the relationship and, you know, we're kind of there going through the motions and standing up and sitting down and saying the memorized prayers, but it was never this, like, this, you know, me and God kind of a relationship, right? And then to be exposed to it and have like your eyes open and like, wow, like I can be in like true personal relationship with God. I can get into the scripture. I don't have some, you know, some guy giving me the liturgy and explaining it. I'm actually getting into the word and doing this. And so that was really foundational for us. And really led to a spiritual awakening. But that period between, right? Like, I don't think if we hadn't stepped away and we hadn't been down in that really low area and kind of been struggling with life, feeling very disconnected, no relationship with God.
Because we were still hungering for it, because we knew with 3 little kids, and as parents, we're like, we have to teach our kids about Jesus. Like, Jesus is number 1 to us. We are just lost right now on how to do that because we're not getting it from the church. What are we supposed to do? And it was like one of my good friends at work just sent us the invitation, like, come to my church, you know, like come and see. And we did. And like, it was so pivotal in so many ways, you know, but
so big. I mean, if for listeners on the podcast, if your church is one that does communicate well, the you know, the teachings of Jesus and invites you and actually trains you like we do to abide with Jesus, and you're afraid to invite, hear that. There's people hungering and thirsting for guidance in their life, whether they are looking for that particularly in Jesus or not. This would be a great option to consider. So just may that be an encouragement for all of us. I know it's a challenge to me. So
I think
Cool.
the other
And
thing we learned from that experience was like, don't be afraid to change something. Like if you, because we could have been afraid to step out of the Catholic Church and just continued on that path, going through the motions, realizing we weren't growing in our faith. We were kind of getting stale, but we were like, something needs to change. And now we need to have the courage to step into something else, to pivot, to try something different so we can keep growing in our relationship with God. And I'm so glad that we hit that valley.
mm,
I'm so glad we hit that dry period, that desert in our life so that something could change, you
yeah,
know? Yeah.
for sure. And Amy, you said you had a another valley to talk about as well. You ready to go
Yeah,
there?
sure. I think more recently, we spent 3 years serving at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And during that time, there was just a lot happening with the COVID-19 pandemic, both of us being in like key leadership positions for 3 years there. Lots of deployments, lots of training, lots of just challenging times that really tested us from leadership standpoint, a spiritual standpoint. And I think for me, like Josh deployed twice while we like those 3 years at Fort Campbell, like Josh had two deployments that the Army took him on and away from home. And I think just feeling overwhelmed as a mom and as a wife and then as an Army officer and a leader and everything that was going on. That second deployment when Josh left, I felt like I just kind of hit rock bottom. Like,
Mm,
I don't know if I can do this anymore. This doesn't feel right anymore.
mm,
It was the first time in my life where I just felt kind of angry at the Army. I'm like, this feels very divisive. Our family needs to be together. Like, I want to do life with my husband, not apart from my husband.
mm,
I mean, this was also collectively our seventh deployment. So it just was like, it was taking a toll. And it was just the first time in our lives where, I mean, obviously Josh was basically almost at 20 years in service. So it was like, this is too much. Something needs to change, you
This is where
know?
the colonel tells the lieutenant colonel, "You're retiring. Time
Yeah,
out."
this is enough. Like, how much more of this can we take? Because our kids are getting older, their schedules are more demanding.
mm,
As you get older, you start to realize like our greatest resource is time. I don't know how much time we have left, but I know for sure I don't want to spend it apart for 6 months. That doesn't
mm,
feel right anymore. That's enough. Like 7 deployments collectively as a family to our country, like that's enough. And we need to switch gears. And so I think for me, for about 6 months there, right at the end of our journey at Fort Campbell, things just got so overwhelming. And again, it was just like I was so grateful that we were in a small group with the bells. We had friends that could support and encourage me in that moment, and I could be really real about that. I could
mm,
let people know like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This doesn't feel right anymore. We're just trying to survive to get through that time. Like my bags were also packed to get ready to go to Ukraine while Josh was away. I'm getting powers of attorney for people to watch our kids set up. Like it just was like this, God, like this just does not feel right anymore, God. Like it was also at that time where like I met all these incredible people that were sports medicine physicians that were like, Amy, you need to consider sports medicine. You would be so great at sports medicine. Like all these seeds were being planted for me kind of that last year at Fort Campbell to like, and I started paying attention to that because I'd never thought
mm,
about that before. But then these people that were so amazing, doing great things, that had done this training program that were kind of pointing me in that direction. You should consider this. You would be great. Like you've, everything you've done to this point would prepare you well to step into that. I just saw that as an open door. I'm like, okay, God, wow, like you're showing me
mm,
something here I need to step into because I can see that that's a future beyond the Army, beyond all this sacrifice that we've done for so long as a family. Like that's an open door. And again, just had the courage to step into it,
mm.
which got us, which when Josh retired and we left Fort Campbell, we were aligned to step right into the hilltop, the hilltop of of just a beautiful last year of just maybe perhaps one of the best years of our life that we just had,
Wow.
So
Wow.
I don't know. I know God was with us the whole time, and he ultimately got us through all that and protected us and provided for us. And we were surrounded by all the right people to get through that time. But that was a valley for me for sure. I was at a
Yeah.
low trying to get through that last year and,
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I want to just kind of freeze and zoom in a little bit. One of the things when we talk about navigating spiritual valleys, and a blog just got put out with Fully Alive about that last week. So go check that out if you haven't seen that yet. But it's one of the things that we say in there. It's usually the real nitty gritty pain points of the lowest of the lows in the valley. It's if we're faithful in those, that's when we can see the new horizon. And you've already started to talk about the new horizon and how God's brought you, that opportunity to chase the fellowship there at Wichita in sports medicine. You've completed the fellowship and you've taken the test, and now you're moving on to the next phase. So we've already started talking about leaving the lowest of the lows to getting to the highest of the highs. But let me back up if I can for the two of you, and the moments at night, or if for me, it's like, it's either at night or if I'm looking at a stoplight for whatever reason, if I'm in traffic and I'm staring at a stoplight, my brain is just locked into how challenging the moment is in the lowest of the lows, those nitty gritty challenges that we face. And you've kind of already described what they were, but if you could give us any more insight of where your mind and heart can go in those, because you said I was angry at the Army, and then you changed it to I was angry with God, or I was starting to question God at least. And how did you persevere in those gritty moments to be able to start to get to the end of the valley? Like it says in Psalm 23, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Like, what were those perseverance moments that you survived, and how did you do it?
I mean, honestly, some of it is like preaching the gospel to myself.
Mm.
Like Joshua 1:9 is like a huge verse that's typically like posted in my office somewhere near my desk. Like, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid. God is with you and will never forsake you. And then like Daniel chapter 3, when like, it's like God is with us in the fire. Like, there's a fourth person in the fire with us, and he's gonna get you out of the fire. And I mean, every challenge and every valley that we've faced together in the last 20 years, God is getting us through it every single time. Like and like you said in John 16:33, it's like, in this life you will have trials, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And so like, I know that with every trial I've ever experienced, great or small, like, it always leads to victory every single time. And so I think I've, preached the gospel to myself to where I know you will have trials. Jesus says you will have trials.
Yep.
And so it's like reminding myself, like, oh yeah, this is another trial. Like, okay, God, but it's going to lead to victory, because that's secure, 100% secure. And I've seen God lead me to victory 100% of the time. And so it's like reminding myself of that. Like, victory is secure. This is painful right now, but like, victory is secure. And I don't know. I think we both have like really healthy coping skills with stress. So like
Sure.
one of my coping skills is like, I'm gonna go run 10 miles right now and worship the Lord on my run. I'm
There
putting
you
in
go.
my earpods. I'm gonna go for a run, and I'm gonna worship God as I'm coping with this stressful moment. Like, I will worship the Lord in stressful times.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I might cry about it or get upset or vent to friends, but like, I'm going to go out and worship the Lord as I'm coping with this, because he will lead us to victory. I've just got to be patient. And being patient is not easy, So, but it's like, I have seen the goodness of God pull through every single time on everything. And so It's
good.
believing. It's the I believe
Mm-hmm.
that we have to remind ourselves every single time. I believe, God, that you are so good, that you're so great, that you're glorious, that you're so gracious. And so that's where he leads us every time, is right
Yeah.
back to his word, right back to what we really believe, and right back to those victories that he does show us every single time. I
Love
mean,
it.
we believe it.
There's a
Yeah.
great there's a great book. I was just going to throw it out there. There's a guy named Guy Gruders, and he has a book called Locked Up with God. And you want to talk about valleys. He was a POW in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and he talks about the closest that he's ever felt and been to God was in the worst periods of his captivity, where he's physically being tortured. And he gives examples of how God showed up. Like, they had this thing like a hot box. They basically put you in a metal box in the jungle out in the sun. He's like, they would every day they would put him in the box, and when they put him in the box, like a cloud would come over and shade it,
Or start
right?
raining.
Or it would start raining. And he's like, there would be all these examples, all these things where he's like, I'm just like praying to God. I mean, he's physically being, tortured,
Yeah.
and God just keeps showing up and showing up and showing up. It's such a good reminder of like how God is present in the valley.
Yeah,
right?
and sometimes that could be your most joyful time, because you see the presence of God in the valley, because God's there with us in the valley. That's the only way, and
he actually says in the book, he says that even after he was repatriated and came back home, he longed to be back in captivity, because that was the most close that the closest he ever felt to God. And he's like, I actually had moments where I was like, I wish I was back so I could be that close to God again. Which is like crazy to think.
That is crazy. And I probably would not share that with him. That's a major thing. But I do know this. It's in those, what I'm calling gritty moments right now, that moment where you just have to, if you don't dig and find a lower spiritual gear, you'll exit. I mean, you can exit the valley or you can push through the valley. And the push through component, is dependent upon your confidence in the promise that God will get you through. You either believe him and you persevere, or you give up on his promise and you exit. And Amy, you said this, I'm going to coin a phrase that I've never used before, but you talked regularly about how this valley that you were in, that he got you through, gave you confidence to get through the next valley. And when you got through that valley, gave you more confidence to go through the next valley. And sometimes the valleys get deeper over time, and you get to borrow that, what I'm going to call accrued gratitude, accrued confidence, to persevere, to be able to go on that 10-mile run and worship, instead of go on that 10-mile run and get a big bottle of whiskey and, take that thing down to ease the pain, or whatever the coping mechanism could be. So, man, I love that. That has been so helpful. All right, let's start to move toward a lighter topic, start to wrap this up. You've been using, as part of the Fully Alive process and part of all the Disciples Made cohorts that we've had, leaders made, missionaries made, etc., use the My Impact equation to measure character and calling. It's like getting on the spiritual scales. Let me just take a quick snapshot of where I am with character, where I am with calling, determine the next step in my life, and come back. How have you been using the My Impact equation, and how has it helped you continue to grow in spite of your already, pretty accomplished level of spiritual development?
Yeah. You want me to answer this? You want to do it? Yeah. So I like the My Impact equation for me has been really valuable, because it just gives you a way to reflect on and assess, like to do some self-assessment. And that character is in the military. We talk a lot about character, but we don't always talk about the calling piece, right? It's we definitely have a character focus, but I think the calling part of it is really valuable too, and it's helped us kind of make that assessment of like, hey, what are your gifts? What are your your special talents that God has blessed you with, and then how do you align those and bring those to bear in those unique places where we have access and influence, right, in our communities, and to have an impact. And so that has been a very cool thing to see, so that as we start to see ourselves on mission in our communities, right, and we now see ourselves as missionaries. We know that we're bringing that character and those gifts and those callings to bear, and so it's been really fun to see. I think the other piece of it that's where I like to see the equation at work is, as we are leading these groups with Fully Alive, helping others kind of put the pieces together and have that aha moment of like, oh, I actually am having a big impact here. Because a lot of times you can do things, you can expend the energy, you can lead the group, and you don't always put together like that. You're bearing fruit, right, and good fruit. By having that and by doing those kind of pre and post assessments, I think it really does help folks that are going through the experience recognize like, oh, wow, I am changing inside. I'm personally changing. And then I'm also having an outward impact in those places where I have unique access and influence, in my spaces, wherever it is that I'm engaging. And it is a positive thing, and there is positive change. And so that helps, I think, others see that as they go through the experience. And so it's been really neat.
So good. What's that maxim? What gets measured gets done. That's why one of our 3 uniques, one of the things that differentiates the Fully Alive community is measurable transformation. We define the transformation. We help you measure it so you can see that progress, because it inspires you. And if it's inspiring you, that means you're doing the right things and becoming fully alive. So, Amy, anything you wanted to add to that before we start to wrap up?
No, I think Josh said it good. Yeah.
Well, I can't tell you how grateful I am. First of all, just for the 2 of you. You've been such an inspiration for me. You're models for how I want to live my life as a follower of Jesus. And I'm just grateful for who you are. Grateful that who you are led you to say, hey, I know we'll be traveling across the country, but hey, we'll take some time in my sister-in-law's house in order to be on a call with you. Thank you so much for being here. As we start to sign off here, just want to remind folks that the My Impact Equation is a free resource inside of the Fully Alive app. And one last time, you can download that Fully Alive app in the Apple Store or Google Play. It's all for free. Hope you'll get in there and take it, comment on it, share your score, share your next steps. If you have questions, let us know inside. It's a community as well as a resource center to help each other move forward in our pursuit of the fully alive life that Jesus has to offer. And that is a wonderful echoing. I guess your sister Amy has some puppies as well. Y'all there. Time to go love on the dogs. Thank you guys again, and blessings on the rest of your travel to West Point. See you.
All right, guys.